Welcome to another episode of the Sports Corner Podcast. Tonight we're talking about week one of the college football season for 2021. My name is Nick, joined as always by my good friend Steven, and we are excited to be here either live via Twitch or in your ears via a podcast video on demand or your podcast app. However you're listening to us, thank you so much for being here as we hit off on episode 6 of season 3 of the Sports Corner Podcast. Steven, how are you?
I'm great, man. Happy belated to you. Big 35 yesterday.
Absolutely, yeah. Yesterday was my birthday, 35, and then tomorrow is your birthday, so happy early birthday to you. You're going to be 26?
You nailed it.
Yeah, 26.
A bad birthday. Get kicked off the parents' insurance.
Oh, yeah, that is rough. But, hey, welcome to another stage of adulthood. We feel like we get those in increments a little bit sometimes, and you're at a new one.
Like 25 was fine.
It's great birthday,
18 was great. 21, big birthday.
I'm going to admit, 35 was always the age that I had in my head as a young child of being the full-fledged, should know everything by now adult. That was like the age that you should have it all figured out. And now that I've hit it, I'm in trouble.
It's 45.
I'm in trouble. That's all I know. But hey, you know what? I do know for sure that week one of college football has happened, with the exception of a game that's going on live right now, but that's okay. We don't really care about that one so much. You'll keep us up to date with anything that's really pressing. So we're going to break down week one of the college football season and how this is going to happen and how our show is going to largely look for the rest of the foreseeable future now that we're done breaking down the conferences leading up to the season, is that we're going to give helmet stickers, we're going to name winners, we're going to name losers, we're going to spend some time focusing on the University of Tennessee because we have a big podcast audience of Tennessee fans. We're going to pick 3 to 5 big games for the week. We'll continue with our Outside the Stadium where we look at something going on outside of sports but relating to athletics. And then, of course, we'll do and end the show with our Mount Rushmore segment. And that's always an exciting time. Now, as the year goes on and NFL football kicks off here in a week, we will start including some of that in our winners and losers and helmet stickers. And then, of course, as big stuff happens in other sports, we'll also include them as needed. All right, Steven. Man, it's a good time to be a football fan, finally.
It is a great time to be a sports fan, man. So I just got back. I went to the United States men's soccer match last night in Nashville, where they played Canada in a World Cup qualifier. So a lot of sports happening. Basketball's around the corner. We are out of the doldrums where it was just baseball all the time.
When does baseball season start again?
It's still going on.
Oh yeah, okay, I forgot. Yeah,
it ends in October, and then it starts again in September. I don't know how that works. They start before they finish. It's weird.
It's
no, I'm kidding. They start in March
with the thing called spring practice, spring ball, spring training camp.
You're all over it.
I don't know. Hey, listen. One thing you guys can rest assured is that you won't hear any baseball talk from me ever. So that's that. All right. Hey, let's jump right into it because we got a jam-packed show tonight, and we got some more stuff to do after the sports podcast is over. By the way, as always, we invite you to watch live on Twitch, twitch.tv/PastorNick86. Join in with the dialogue. You can be among our Australian friend Whitey in the chat right now, who's telling us that we should be eating Vegemite, and I've tried Vegemite before, and it is the worst. Ow. So you could be in chat saying terrible things like that.
Sure.
All right. Helmet stickers first, right, Steven?
That is how you laid it out in the rundown.
That is how I laid it out in the rundown. All right, so our helmet stickers, by way, if you haven't heard us explain this before, basically we're going to hand out a kudos, a good job, an attaboy to either a specific team, maybe a specific player, it could be a coach, it could be something like that, but we're kind of recognizing...
We reserve the right to put a sticker on anything we want.
That's right. This is really, whether you wear a helmet or not, we're going to put a sticker on your forehead and you're going to deal with it. Okay? Okay, so my first one is going to be helmet sticker going to Bijan Robinson. He is the running back from Texas. If you listen to our breakdown of the Big 12, this is not the first time you've heard me mention his name because I mentioned him on our Heisman watch list from the Big 12. And you're going to hear me talk about this. You're going to hear Steven talk about this a little bit later in the show. But there were a lot of these preseason Heisman hopefuls that did not have great week ones. A few did. Many did not. But Bijan Robinson, in my opinion, had himself a very good week one in this college football season. There are probably some that wish that he would have done a little bit more. But I think those people are being a little bit unrealistic or putting a little too many expectations on him. So he played very well. He was active in the running game, as you would expect, as you would desire. He had 20 touches for 103 yards. That's 5.3 yard average. And he had a touchdown. Now, here in a second, I would love your opinion on whether he can sustain 20 touches a game or if you think they're going to burn him out. But in addition to that, and I think what was maybe even more impressive to me was the ability that he had to come out of the backfield and catch the ball and make plays in the passing game. He was the second most targeted player on the team. He was the second in leading receiving yards with 73, and he added another touchdown through the air. So for those keeping track at home, that's 24 total touches for 176 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he was playing against a top 25 team. I know Louisiana, not the powerhouse thing, but they were in the top 25 and perhaps looking to be better than LSU. So,
so Louisiana returned 9 or 10 starters on that defensive side of the ball. It's a defense that was very good last year. They did beat Iowa State in week 1 last year. So yes, they're not the best team in the country, but that's also not a pushover for your first game, especially your first game as the head coach of a new university like Steve
it's
Sarkisian.
no Tulane.
He is on record as saying he expects, his goal is to give Bijan 20 touches a week. That's his goal. Ironically, the touchdown, I don't know if you watched much of the game, the touchdown came on a wheel route where they cleared out the whole left side, and he snuck out of the backfield. They ran that exact same play in the national championship game, the Alabama versus Ohio State, I believe. And they scored on it. And whenever Sarkisian already been named the head coach, but he coached through the national championship game with Alabama. When he ran that play, I thought, man, that would be fun to see run with Bijan as good as he is. And then lo and behold, week one,
you didn't have to wait long to see that one.
Nope. Ironically, he also was the team's leading, at least highest scored blocker on the day. So better than any offensive lineman. Not sure that's a good thing or not.
Probably not what you want to go for. I think he can handle 20 touches, but if he's out there doing the heavy lifting on blocking and QB protection, you just hate to see him get worn down. But hey, let's see what he can do until he proves otherwise, right?
It's week 1. Beat him. My first helmet sticker goes to Ren Heffley, the quarterback for Presbyterian. So I know this is an FCS game, and we kind of typically focus more on the FBS. But Heffley was 38 of 50 for 538 yards and 10 touchdowns, breaking the record for most touchdowns in a single game. In Presbyterian's 84-43 win over St. Andrews. So he probably shouldn't have been left in as long as he was. But, you still can't argue with the stat line, and he deserves a helmet sticker.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Very impressive stats for that young man. My second helmet sticker is going to Mackenzie Milton. He is the backup quarterback for Florida State University. Now, whenever I was looking for helmet stickers, things to go out, I saw his name, and I'll admit that it pinged on my radar, but I couldn't remember why. So I had to do a little bit of research. Now, you're much more into this, so I'm sure that name pinged for you automatically, right? You knew this story and all that, and this probably isn't a big surprise for you, but maybe if you don't follow football at least as much as someone like Steven does, before last night, Milton's last game to play was November 23rd, 2018. At that time, he was the quarterback for UCF. UCF had things rolling, and Milton was actually getting Heisman attention, some Heisman love during that season. and he's playing in his final game of the season, playing against South Florida. He's calling in the zone read, and he decides that he's going to keep the ball, something he's done countless times before to great success. However, on this particular play, 2 South Florida defenders tackle him, and it absolutely destroys this young man's knee. So here's what I read about his knee injury. Dislocated knee, shredded ligaments. Now, I'll admit, I wrote torn ligaments, and then as I read, it was like actually said like shredded ligaments, and I was like, oh, that seems worse than a torn ligament. And probably worst of all, he had severe artery damage. So when I Googled his name, the first result that popped up was, will he ever play again? This is like the most asked questions when people Googled his name. So his doctors, by the way, initially said no. In fact, they said that their ideal outcome was that one day he might be able to walk without a limp. This was their best case scenario. Here's a quote that I found from some of his doctors. Dr. Bruce Levy, one of the top orthopedic surgeons in the United States who took over Milton's case, told the Orlando Sentinel that he suffered a knee dislocation in the knee where the thigh bone and lower leg bone were completely dislocated. That caused significant disruption to the blood flow in his leg. He also tore ligaments and some tendons, resulting in no nerve function or very little nerve function in his knee. That is a nasty injury. Going on in that, it says one doctor reportedly told Milton that nearly 50% of patients with similar injuries had to have their leg amputated. And the damage was more severe than expected, and doctors, including Levy, weren't sure if Milton would ever play football again. So this is the setup. This dude is injured in such a way where not only are they saying, you're probably not going to play football, but dude, you might not walk without a limp. But he went and he worked and he rehabbed, and if you heard me say it earlier, I said the last time he played before last night was ... So he does get back on the field.
The fact that he practiced is worthy of a helmet sticker.
Exactly, yeah, no doubt. So he started off back at UCF, where he kind of ran the practice squad for a year, but then he transferred, and he goes to FSU, and he did not win the starting job. Probably no one was really sure if he could go out there and handle the full game load. And then cue the fourth quarter from the game last night versus Notre Dame. Florida State is down 10. QB1 goes out of the game with an injury. Mackenzie Milton steps in and leads the team to score 10 consecutive points. He went 5 for 7 for 48 yards, added 6 more yards on the ground. Now, if you followed the sport last night, FSU did lose that game, but it wasn't because he threw a pick or fumbled the ball or failed to make the throw or failed to get a read. They lost because their kicker missed a pretty easy kick in overtime. Not to beat up on that guy, but of no fault of Milton did they lose that game. Impressive, worthy of the helmet sticker, just for the ability to get back on the field and show the gut that he showed last night.
Tennessee's head coach was formerly at UCF, as we talked about, and they asked him about it today, and he said he did not watch the game last night, but he had several texts this morning when he woke up, and he went and watched the highlights, and he said that basically he's not surprised that Milton was able to get back on the field. That's just kind of how he's wired. So if it was possible, this would be the guy to do it.
Yeah.
One note on the missed field goal. Apparently, the play prior, something happened, and so he actually wound up trying a 50-yarder, and he made it, but the Florida State coach called timeout to challenge. No. He wins the challenge, moves it up to a 35, 40-yarder, and then he misses that
Shanks
one.
That. Oh, man.
So he makes the 50-yarder and then misses.
The kicking thing is so weird. We'll mention it a little bit later, but OU kind of had some kicking interesting stats as well. So, all right, give me your next helmet sticker, my friend.
Similar to yours, not as dramatic, but Zeb Noland, the quarterback for South Carolina. I'm sure you know who Zeb Noland is, right?
Heard the name.
Okay.
Sure.
So it's less about the stats, although they are impressive, but more about the story, similar to Milton. So he came to South Carolina as a GA to try to start his coaching career.
Yep.
The fun fact here is that he was actually helping coach wide receivers. He was not even involved with the quarterships.
Gotta love that.
But he began his career at Iowa State as a quarterback back in 2016. Saw his first game action as redshirt freshman in 2017, where he played in 4 games, including 1 start. As a sophomore in 18, he played in 5 games. He did have an impressive showing against Oklahoma, where he threw for 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. But ultimately, he was behind Brock Purdy, who is still at Iowa State. He then transferred to FCS Power North Dakota State, where he competed with, but ultimately lost the job to Trey Lance. Trey Lance, last year's number 3 overall pick in the draft. And then in 2020, after Trey Lance opted out, he did start 7 games for North Dakota State. Nothing really of note there. So he was kind of done. He was ready to just hang it up. He was,
Hey, you're a graduate assistant now.
He had no real shot at the NFL. He was ready to get that coaching career started, as we've seen with a lot of, I don't want to say failed, but he made it to Division I college football on scholarship. That's not a failure.
Yeah, certainly not.
But his career didn't play out the way he wanted. He was ready to get started with the next chapter. So he goes to South Carolina, and like I said, his playing days are over. So he's going to start coaching, and Shane Beamer agrees to bring him in and let him get work with the wide receivers. So South Carolina's presumed starter, Luke Doty, injures his right foot in the middle of August, leading head coach Shane Beamer scrambling and ultimately deciding, hey, Zeb Noland, could you just kind of practice there? Just get us there until we see how long Doty's going to be out. The timeline is still not clear. They do expect Doty back in the next couple of weeks, but not before we got Zeb Noland's start for South Carolina on Saturday. Again, his stat line was not great. He was 12 of 22 for 121 yards, but he did throw 4 touchdowns. Not bad for a guy who was expecting to coach this year.
Not bad at all. I can't imagine what that mentally was like for him to go through that emotional of, hey, I'm ready to start this next chapter, and then to be back on the field. Pretty stinking impressive indeed. All right, so I've got another helmet sticker for you. It is Michael Pratt, the quarterback from Tulane. So before I get into this, let me just give a shout out to the situation in general. If you're not kind of familiar with Tulane, Tulane is located there in Louisiana, right around New Orleans area. And so they were heavily impacted by Hurricane Ida. They had to basically pack up extremely quickly, and they headed to Birmingham, where they were able to stay in a hotel in Birmingham and do some practicing in that area. And so when that happened, the University of Oklahoma kind of reached out to them and said, hey, if we can move the game to Birmingham or somewhere in that area, we'll happily do that. Or if you just want us to cancel the game, no bad feelings, no pen, nothing like this. We'll cancel the game. It's no big deal.
They agreed to pay them out still, right?
Yeah, we'll pay it. I mean, no money issues here. Just you guys do what you got to do. So just I know I'm an OU homer, so I see class where sometimes class isn't probably, but I felt like that was a classy move. In the end, Tulane said no, we'll keep the game. We want to play it. And to make things simple, we're just going to come to Norman, and that's fine. And so I just want to give some kudos, first of all, for Norman being able to get game ready in under a week. I know it seems like they're probably should always be game ready, but from some people that I know, some reporters out there, everything they had to do to get the field ready, to get the stadium ready, to get vendors, and just people to check security and
it's
all
not
that
game
stuff.
4, right? I mean. This is the opener. They're expecting to have another week to get all their
ducks
things
in a row.
Place.
Yeah, absolutely. So it even actually, interestingly enough, was they didn't have enough workers that they actually closed off the top tier section of the stadium and only filled in the lower bowl just because they didn't want to do it wrong. But they also painted Tulane's their mascot kind of symbol there on the OU field, which again, doesn't seem like a big deal, big whoopee, but this coming from a very storied university that probably has never had someone else's logo, voluntarily drawn on their field before. Thought that was a classy move, and then they also gave Tulane all of the revenue from ticket sales as well. So just a classy thing from both universities to get into it. But now let's get to Michael Pratt, the guy who's actually getting this helmet sticker here. So Tulane did fall just short of winning this game, but it was a game that they shouldn't have been close in. And I think that maybe could be potentially attributed to them to having an avenue to release the pent-up emotion from the previous week. But wherever the credit lies, it definitely has to lie on their ability to execute, their ability to go out and to play the game the way that the coach called it, and a lot of it on the back of a guy by the name of Michael Pratt, the quarterback for this university. Now, tangibly, he went 27 for 44 for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. Not terrible stats at all by any means. Obviously, you'd like to see that completion rate up, but throwing for just shy of 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against a an OU defense that's supposed to be better, right? That's certainly impressive. He also was the leading rusher for Tulane with 15 carries, 34 yards, and another touchdown. But even more than the tangibles, his intangibles were so impressive to me. Like I mentioned, he picked apart that OU defense that was supposed to be making the statement year forward under another year of defensive coordinator Alex Grinch. And I will admit, Pratt was sacked or hurried or knocked down more times than I can count. I think the sack count was actually only 3 or 4. But that dude was on his back. It felt like every other play. And every time he popped up, got his guys lined up, stayed poised, and at the end of the day, he was like, 8 inches away from picking up a 4th down conversion that would have given you, not on that play, but you were driving down the field. You had all the momentum. It was a game-winning drive, and he came up just a little bit short. Couldn't have been more happy for the guy. Obviously, as an OU fan, I'm sitting there on pins and needles. I don't like what's happening, but I loved watching that kid play. I hope nothing but success for him moving forward.
There's one time that you can be okay with taking that loss. It's to a team that's faced all of that turmoil over the last week. And that play you're talking about, he dove it felt like 10 yards and he came up.
Well, and there was a play early in the game where it was initially called for targeting, and that targeting call was overturned, which I think was the right call. It was not targeting, in my opinion, but it was quite a lick. And he just popped up from it. He came out for a play, and I think that was actually his coach misunderstanding because his helmet came off in that play, and the ref did say neither player has to sit out. And I'm wondering if Tulane's coaches missed it, or maybe they kept him out to kind of look him over for a play because it was such a hit. Either way, he came out for one play, but was immediately back in on the next play and didn't miss a beat. So
he was a gamer
enough for that. Yeah, absolutely.
My final helmet sticker goes to Bryce Young, quarterback for Alabama, one of the guys that did live up to the hype. So we talked last week about everyone that Alabama lost last year, including their top 2 receivers, offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian, and that really took an effect on Alabama this weekend as they were only able to muster 44 points and 501 yards of offense. Just a brutal day. So he made his first career start and was just unbelievable. He accounted for 344 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. He also flashed some of his dual threat ability, not in his scramble yardage, but with his ability to keep plays alive, keep his eyes downfield. And so here's a fun little comparison for you. He broke the record for most touchdowns and passing yards in his Bama debut. Wow. And just to line him up with 3 guys that will be starting week 1 in the NFL here. So I mentioned Young was 25 of 36 for 344 yards and 4 touchdowns. Mac Jones in his debut against Missouri last year. And this is kind of their first real start. Mac Jones had a couple garbage time after Tua got hurt. Mac Jones was 18 of 24, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tua in his first start against Louisville was 12 of 16 for 227 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Hurts was 23 of 36 for 287 yards and 2 touchdowns against Western Kentucky. So he played the best of those 4 teams, had the best numbers, and all 3 of those other guys will be starting this week in the NFL. So the future is always bright for Alabama quarterbacks, but especially for Mr. Bryce Young.
There's some kind of voodoo going on there. I don't know what it is, but it's working for him. Might as well keep it going. All right, so that is our helmet stickers. Those are some players, some situations that are worthy of celebrating, worthy of being recognized, and we know that they'll appreciate being heard by our multiple 3 viewers. And that's podcast downloads. No, we do want to recognize those guys. They did great stuff. All right, let's move into our winners and losers. I'll kick us off with our first winner for the day. It is the Ohio State skill players. Now, I said during our Big Ten breakdown that C.J. Stroud would have time to settle into his role at quarterback and that his skill players around him would make his job easy. That proved to be true in Week 1 when, in fairness, Minnesota gave the Buckeyes all they could handle and almost more. And Stroud, he looked good overall, but there is definite room for improvement, definite room for growth. They need him to be more. But it was his skill players that came through in a big way for the team on Thursday night. So Stroud, really quick, was 13 for 22, 294, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. So just by the stats, it looks good. Well, let's see why. What helped make him look good? I mentioned when we talked about Ohio State in the preseason that they had probably the best receiver core in the nation with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Those guys showed out. Olave had 4 catches, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wilson had 5 catches for 80 yards and 1 touchdown. So those guys coming up big, almost 200 yards just with between the two of them. And then true freshman running back Travion Henderson added a 70-yard touchdown reception as well. So there's just another free 70 yards off a player who was able to go out and make people miss and do some great things. Add in the fact that Mayan Williams, their star or their starter running back anyway, averaged 13.9 yards per carry out of the backfield with 125 yards and another touchdown. So Ohio State a little bit closer than they wanted to be. They got some things to figure out, but those skill players are going to keep Ohio State in just about every game. And as long as their quarterback can get the ball in their hands with a little bit of space, I'm not too worried about what they're going to be able to do. So the Ohio State skill players, definitely a winner for me in week 1.
The unfortunate news coming out of this game, Minnesota's star running back, Ibrahim, or don't know exactly how to pronounce it. He is out for the year with a lower leg injury.
Did they ever say was that the Achilles, or did they confirm that?
I don't know. I saw a lower leg injury would cost him the year. I didn't see exactly what, but just a heartbreaker for a guy that was just lighting up that Ohio State defense.
He was
looking to have a fantastic year. Obviously, if you're doing that against Ohio State, you like your chances of doing that against some of these other teams.
For sure.
But I will keep it in the Big Ten. Penn State is my first winner.
Mm-hmm.
So the Nittany Lions upset 12th-ranked Wisconsin 16-10 in Madison on Saturday behind a stellar defensive effort. Their offense obviously needs to be better. They only had 11 first downs, but they did enough to let their defense win this game for them. Let me explain why they had 11 first downs right here. Wisconsin had the ball for almost 43 minutes of game time. But they could only muster 10 points in that 43 minutes. Penn State forced 3 turnovers, including 2 interceptions late in the fourth on back-to-back drives to seal the win. So the first time they were down in the red zone, and they had the ball at the 1 before Wisconsin fumbled the snap, and then they wound up getting back on it. And then kind of desperation, 4th and goal, he heaved it, got it picked off. And then the next drive, so they were forced a 3 and out there, got the ball back, Wisconsin did, and then just threw a horrible pick late. They also added 2 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. They had a player get ejected for targeting their best defensive player, and they still were able to close out the game without him. I am also a loser here, at least not a winner, because I picked Graham Mertz, the starting quarterback for Wisconsin, as my dark horse Heisman contender. He was 22 of 37 for 185 yards, 2 picks, both of which were just horrible decisions. And he also had the lone fumble that they lost as well. So just a horrible day for Mertz. Wisconsin did not look good, but kudos to that Penn State team for hanging in there. And that game was actually tied 0-0 in the third quarter.
Yeah, I remember I didn't watch that game, but I was kind of scrolling through my Twitter feed, and it was kind of like a update. Third quarter, still 0-0. Will there be an offensive score in this game? So
yeah, I almost had the viewers of that game as a loser, but I decided to give Penn State some love.
Understandable. All right, my next winner is going to be the dark Heisman hopefuls, the dark horse Heisman hopefuls. So I'm going to get into this a little bit more when we talk about our losers here in a couple of minutes. But after week 1, the door is absolutely wide open for some Heisman dark horse or dark horses to get their names thrown around and into consideration for this great trophy, this great award. Now, I'm going to focus specifically on Cincinnati quarterback Desmond Ritter. I know Ritter and his team played against Miami of Ohio, and that's not the stiffest competition. But then again, neither was a team like Tulane. And at least Miami of Ohio is the defending MAC champions. So they're not like a, completely useless team. Ritter went 20 for 25 for 295 yards. He had 4 touchdown passes, and he also rushed for 31 yards and another score. His team won big, 49-14. He just was making decisions all throughout the game that looked like he was in mid-season form. And when you watch a lot of these other guys, a lot of these other Heisman hopefuls, they were looking very much like Game 1, Week 1 I don't know, got to knock the rust off something. So here's someone who, beforehand, obviously we didn't cover a team like Cincinnati, and that's why he didn't make either one of our Heisman lists. But he wasn't on a lot of Heisman's lists. I spent a lot of time researching Heisman's list for each one of our segments and never really came across his name. And now I've already seen him mentioned a couple of times, as well as a few other players that just were not going to be mentioned before the season started. Perhaps an argument of why preseason watch list and preseason rankings aren't always a good thing to go off of.
He was very good last year for them, but this is kind of a coming out party on the national stage. His odds are now at plus 2,500, the same as Bijan Robinson and Sam Howell, who I believe you will talk about in a minute.
Yep.
So definitely has put himself firmly in that conversation. He'll have a couple more opportunities as the year goes on to increase those odds. Is Miami, Ohio better than Miami, Florida?
Ooh, good question. It's debatable.
So we won't get into them too much tonight, but
Nah.
I'm sick and tired of us thinking that they're going to give anybody a game because it's never going to happen.
It just doesn't work out that way.
I'm going to head out to the West Coast for my second winner here.
Okay.
Chip Kelly and the UCLA Bruins. So they blew the doors off of Hawaii in week 0.
Mm-hmm.
Many people expected them to win that one handily. But still, good to see a team do what they're supposed to do, right? And you've mentioned Oklahoma and them kind of struggling with Tulane there. So they went out and took care of business. But everybody had this game circled. So they had their matchup this past weekend against number 16 LSU. It was at home, which is helpful, but still, that's a game that many people thought would be close, but had the Tigers coming out victorious. And so this was their first true test, and Chip Kelly passed with flying colors. The Bruins pulled off the 38-27 upset and displayed very sound football across the board. No one's going to confuse LSU starting quarterback Max Johnson for Joe Burrow, but he is still a very capable quarterback, had pretty good numbers. But the fact that UCLA was able to hold them to only 27 points is impressive, especially after you look at their rush defense. We all know LSU, a lot of SEC teams pride themselves on running the ball and dominating the line of scrimmage. LSU ran the ball 25 times for only 49 yards.
Wow.
So on the other side of the ball, you had quarterback Dorian Thompson Robinson, a guy we mentioned as a dark horse, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He might finally be living up to all the hype he received out of high school. He was 9 of 16 for 260 yards. So, 9 of 16, 260. That's an impressive yard per attempt there.
Sure.
3 touchdowns, only 1 interception. But really the surprise of the early season has to be the two-headed running back monster of Zach Charbonnet, I'm hoping, and Britton Brown. So Charbonnet had 11 carries for 117 yards and a touchdown. And Britton Brown added 12 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. Overall, UCLA torched the usually strong LSU defense for 210 yards on the ground at 4.5 yards per carry. So is this the year that Chip Kelly finally gets UCLA to the Pac-12 championship game? I mean, it's been a while since he's been there. But I saw today that this is actually the first time he's had a full 85 scholarship team since he's been at UCLA. So
that's
maybe
pretty
there's
impressive.
something to that.
Well, we've said it for years that, I don't know, we needed to see something out of him, that he was not getting it done at UCLA, and wondered how long UCLA would give him. Obviously, this buys him some time. That cools down any seat warming that was going on. Be interested to see what happens for him moving forward.
The Ogre's seat just got hot, though.
Yeah, and they're the type of fan base that'll run you off for one bad season, for sure.
Yep.
So my final winner for the week is the Georgia Bulldogs. I think you're going to break this down of why they're a winner for me in your loser section. So I'm just going to mention that they are a winner for a good reason, for their victory over Clemson. And I'll let you kind of get into the details as we move into losers.
Perfect. My final winner, FCS schools.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to this list of upsets in week 1.
Okay.
Montana beats number 20 Washington. I will absolutely cover that in just a moment.
Okay.
ETSU dominated Vanderbilt. Dominated 23-3.
That's terrible. That's like a high school team, guys. I don't. If no one out there is listening, East
Yeah,
Tennessee State
Vanderbilt.
University.
Yeah, Vanderbilt's like a high school team. You're right.
Yeah, ETSU, in case you don't know, is East Tennessee State University. I mean, it is
It's a directional school.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to Vanderbilt in front of a just hostile 80-person crowd.
Yeah.
And beat Vanderbilt 23-3. UC Davis beats Tulsa Tulsa, after the year they had last year, UC Davis goes in and beats Tulsa 19-17. Eastern Washington beats UNLV 35-33 in overtime. Holy Cross beats UConn, who might be the worst team in the FBS, 38-28. That's not just a lucky win.
No.
And South Dakota State crushes Colorado State 42-23. Moving on from there, you also have Northern Iowa, who gave Iowa State all they wanted in a 16-10 loss, and Missouri State nearly pulled off the upset over Oklahoma State in a 23-16 loss. A lot of weird things in week one, and I am absolutely here for it. I hope it continues as the season goes on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely insane. All right, well, let's keep it up. I mentioned that Georgia was a winner for me. You were going to elaborate on why that is by looking at the losers, so I'll let you start off in Loserville there.
So my loser here is UAB, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, Charleston Southern, Georgia Tech offenses. Why? Because that is who Georgia plays the rest of the way. Specifically, these teams' quarterbacks. I don't know if you watched much of that Georgia-Clemson game, but if you did, oh my goodness, did you see what they did to that Clemson offense?
Ooh, man.
Highly touted quarterback DJ Ayungalele, who we talked about as a Heisman contender and a leading Heisman contender, was 19 of 37 for 178 yards and 0 touchdowns, including a pick six, the only touchdown of the game.
Yeah.
He was sacked 7 times.
Wow.
So Clemson finished the game with two rushing yards on 23 attempts. That is 0.1 yards per carry.
That is not a stat you want.
Georgia lost the turnover battle, only accounted for 15 first downs, amassed 256 yards of offense, and still beats the number 3 team in the country.
Amazing.
This defense is legit, and I feel so sorry for the rest of the teams on their schedule. If that offense gets it figured out, I think this is the team that might do it for Georgia. They were nasty on Saturday night, and I absolutely have no desire to watch Tennessee play them. And I think you just start the 4th string quarterback and get out of there alive. That's all you're going.
Just take a knee every time you're on offense. No, we were both high on Georgia, especially coming out of the East. You were riding them all the way through the SEC championship, and certainly there's a lot of season left to play. A lot of things can change, but by golly, that's looking like a wise pick right now. Not that Alabama's looking bad. You've already covered that, but man, Georgia was looking great, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and that was very, very impressive. All right, I got a couple of losers as well. My first one, I'm going to kind of do 2 back-to-back here, Stephen. Give me a little bit of wiggle room there on that one. My first one is Sam Howell, and really UNC overall, because, I don't mind mentioning a person individually, but I certainly don't want to just pick and beat up on someone. But North Carolina entered this season as our dark horse pick from the ACC, and as a team to watch, especially in their division. Sam Howell was on both of our Heisman contender list, and again, it's 1 week. It doesn't determine the whole season. It doesn't, you don't define everything by week 1. But there's no denying that UNC fans were left feeling empty as their team and their stud quarterback just completely underperformed. Howell was 17 of 32 with only 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions, including one that sealed the deal late in the game and just kind of guaranteed that they had a loss. Now, speaking to UNC as a little bit more of a whole, Tennessee transfer running back Ty Chandler only added 66 yards on the ground, but did not prove to be any kind of an upgrade over his second-string counterpart. And it also looked like UNC really as a team was just buying into the hype that they were supposed to be better than others, and they kind of forgot that they had to come out and compete and prove it. So I'll be interested to see if that is a wake-up call. Now, I'll mention this back-to-back with it.
Better be.
I'm going to also mention Spencer Rattler and Oklahoma for a lot of the same reasons, and really my third loser is going to kind of follow even in suit, but I'll let you get a word in before I get to that one. So Spencer Rattler and Oklahoma become my second loser. In fairness, I can't mention Howell and North Carolina and then not turn around and mention Oklahoma. The only difference is that OU did barely hold on to get the win, and that was almost entirely thanks to a nice second quarter play and the fact that their kicker hit 4 out of 5 field goals, including 3 of them over 50 yards, his longest being a 56-yarder. Now, interestingly enough, the one that he missed was like a 35-yarder, so I don't know. Kickers are weird, man. But really, if it wasn't for a great second quarter and the fact that the kicker hit 3 from 50 yards or greater, Oklahoma would have lost this game. Rattler was the consensus Heisman frontrunner for me, for you, and much more importantly, for every Heisman article that I read, whether it was from ESPN, from CBS, from SportingNews.com, everyone.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler,
he was
consensus Heisman frontrunner, right?
Yeah, he's the betting
favorite. So let's look at his stats. On paper, some of them don't look terrible. He was 30 for 39 with 304 yards, and he had 1 touchdown. So that doesn't look terrible on paper. However, he did have 2 interceptions. That doesn't look good. And I'll be honest, and I will, as an OU fan, admit this completely. He should have had a 3rd interception, but was saved by a passing interference call that the replay did not show passing interference. Now, they never went back and followed that receiver and that defender from the start of the snap. Maybe something happened early. I don't know. But what they showed in the replay was not defensive pass interference. That should have been another interception. He should have thrown 3, and that would have been a big potential way that OU could have lost that game. So, but more than just the numbers, Rattler did not look like a Heisman contender, let alone a Heisman frontrunner. He continually made poor throwing choices, and more than anything, he just did not seem to have the command of the offense and the swagger that he had over the last 6 or so games last year. I mean, he just didn't look it. Well, he's got to get that figured out.
We talked about his numbers when we broke down the Big 12 and how down the stretch he was lights out for them, and it seemed like he turned that corner. He had kind of that freshman deer in the headlights, and then he turned the corner. I did not watch this whole game. I did watch early. His first pick was horrible.
It was
terrible. A horrible decision.
Yeah.
I mean, just
triple
coverage
yeah.
off his back foot. A Texas beat writer who likes to normally poke fun at Oklahoma called him backpedal Rattler or something like that, because apparently the whole day he never seemed to set his feet. He just kept backpedaling and then trying to fling it out there. I mean, my hope for you is that they were looking ahead, and the good news is, you get your cupcake this week with Nebraska.
Yeah, that's right. No, OU's that's the sad thing though, Stephen, is because, in a sense, I do think OU is looking and planning ahead, or at the very least, I think they're overlooking Tulane. But no, next week's not Nebraska. Next week is WCU. So we were apparently looking forward to Western Carolina Catamounts. So
yeah, well, hopefully he gets it sorted out.
In fairness, WCU only lost to Eastern Kentucky by a field goal, so it's a good thing we were putting a little bit of focus on that team.
It could
no, we're probably. I mean, I'll agree that our players are probably overlooking Tulane a little bit. No excuse though, and certainly not from your quarterback.
You look at a game like this, and I know we're wasting time here, but this is a team that. The team they're playing has dealt with everything over the past week, 10 days, right? If anybody had a reason to come out here, go through the motions, lay an egg, collect a paycheck, go home, it's Tulane, right? I mean, and it's not like, Oklahoma didn't punch them in the mouth. I mean, they got up fairly big. I turned it off in the second quarter.
28-0 run in the second quarter. That game should have been put away.
So at that point, I said, okay, Tulane, they fought early. They kind of had that emotional high of having something else to focus on other than the football. But, I mean, that second half must have been horrible from an OU standpoint. And, I mean, you like to trust Lincoln Riley and let him figure it out. But, last year, I don't know who the backup is this year. Last year, you had a trusted backup that you could put in if you didn't trust Spencer Rattler to get the job done. I'm not so sure you want to turn to a backup now, and you got to hope that Rattler snaps out of this and he had a rough game.
Yeah, I don't honestly know who the backup would be. So yeah, go ahead though. I'm sorry.
My final loser tonight. Real quick, I want to go back to Clemson. The last time that Clemson was shut out was in 2003 against Georgia. So they were not shut out; they had a field goal. But the last time they did not score a touchdown was back in 2007.
Wow.
So just to further highlight how good that offense has been and how great that defense was for Georgia. The second loser is Washington. This is a team that last year should have played for the Pac-12 title game. COVID-19 outbreak kept them from playing in that game with the way the Pac-12 rules were last year. They were unable to play, and so somebody went in their place. So this year they opened the season with Montana, a fairly good team for their division, but what should be a fairly easy win for a Power 5 school, especially number 20 ranked Washington. And they turned in a 13-7 loss. Redshirt freshman quarterback Dylan Morris earned the start after starting all 4 games for the Huskies last season and was abysmal. He went 27 of 46, 226 yards with no touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And he got no help from the ground game either, as Washington ran the ball 27 times for 65 yards, 2.4 yards per carry. So not as bad as Clemson, but still, they weren't playing Georgia. They were playing Montana.
Yeah.
Not exactly known for football. The defense was stellar, as it usually is for Washington, but they're going to need a whole lot more from their offense if they want to have any hope of competing in the Pac-12 when they face USC and Oregon,
UCLA,
and
Oregon.
UCLA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the smaller teams like Oregon State and Washington State, and I mean, all these teams. I mean, that 7 points isn't going to win you any ball games unless you're Georgia, maybe.
Crazy, absolutely crazy. It's I don't know. We're seeing a lot of crazy things go on in week 1. We're gonna have to see some turnarounds from it. My last loser of the week is going to be the other Heisman hopeful quarterbacks not named Bryce Young. So I've already mentioned Spencer Rattler. I've already mentioned Sam Howell. But let's talk about some of these other guys that have just been underperforming in week 1. Now, I'm just going to read this to you because we're running short on time. I've got a lot more to cover. So let me just read this. This is from a CBS article that was posted today. It says this: Heisman Trophy hopefuls. Bryce Young aside, the rest of the college football's elite quarterbacks didn't have a great start to 2021. Howell threw his first fourth-quarter interception of his career against the Hokies. Oklahoma Spencer Rattler threw a pair of picks and let Tulane nearly pull off the upset. Number 6, Texas A&M's Haynes King threw 3 picks to let Kent State hang around far too long. Clemson's DJ Ungalula was hounded all day long by the ferocious Georgia defense. And even number 7 Iowa State's Brock Purdy was inconsistent in a close game against Northern Iowa. If any team plans to compete with Alabama for a national championship, its quarterback will have to do better than we saw in week 1. So these are a lot of the powerhouses, a lot of the Heisman frontrunners, a lot of the people that were getting some national love before the season started, and a lot of them had very poor performances in week 1. So let's see what they can do. They got to turn it around. They got to get things on track. And I'm not going to overreact to any one of these guys. They can all turn it around. I believe that, but they got to go out and do it.
Yeah, nobody's out of the running at this point.
Sure.
But it left a lot to be desired. And, other than Ayungulele, the rest of those should have been pretty easy wins. I guess UNC and Virginia Tech was a decent game, but the rest of those should have been easy wins.
Yeah.
Fun fact, just to close out our section here, we mentioned Iowa State struggling and Brock Purdy. Did you know that Matt Campbell is something like 7-11 in September games?
I heard that. Yeah, I think you mentioned that in our text thread, and that's kind of surprising.
Yeah, a guy as good as he's been, a team as good as they've been, 7-11. And I know we mentioned this. I know I mentioned this in the ACC breakdown, and I think the Big 12 as well. We talked about Iowa State, UNC playing in that underdog role. They've been very good at it. And now, what does it look like with these top 10 expectations?
Yeah, for sure.
And both laid somewhat of an egg. So let's transition now to Tennessee. We are running low on time, like you mentioned, but we can kind of recap real quick. I'll let you take us away with the recap.
Yeah, so let's just look at a little bit of week 1 reflection. Overall, I think the score ended about where both you and I thought that it probably would end up, within a couple of points. So the final score in that game was 38-6. So on paper, that looks really, really good. I mean, you can't complain about that if you're a Tennessee fan. We had two running backs that each had over 100 yards. I mean, I did not look into
First
it.
time
The last
since
time okay, you probably did. Yeah, first time win since.
13.
Okay, yeah. So I mean,
Wait,
that's really impressive. Here's what I'll say. I really thought that the first drive of the game and the first drive of the third quarter were extremely well drawn up and extremely well executed. That gives me a lot of confidence in what Heupel's able to do, and we just have to see that translate to the other drives in the game, right? Um, and then Joe Milton, though, starting quarterback for Tennessee, he just has to make better and quicker decisions. Now, I'm going to give the offensive line a lot of credit. Now, granted, not against the most stiff or ferocious competition, but they gave him a lot more time than we have seen a Tennessee quarterback have to make a decision and throw the ball. So kudos to the line for giving him that time, but Milton's got to be able to make a decision and get the ball out, read it, check down, do whatever you got to do. I felt like he either held on to it too long and then was forced either into making a bad throw or to try and scramble and just not really make it work. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to mention for a week one reflection is that our receivers, they have to catch the ball. There were several times during that Tennessee game where it hit someone right in the numbers, hit someone right in the center of the chest, and they did not catch that ball. And you can't do that. If you're a Tennessee receiver, you've got to catch the ball when it's catchable because, again, a lot of Tennessee receivers have not had that luxury the last couple of years to have a lot of catchable balls thrown their way. Any week one reflections from you?
Offensive line looked good. The team looked more prepared than I've seen them the last several years. They looked
Mm-hmm.
like they had a plan. They didn't always execute, but
Mm-hmm.
I, in years past, I thought you could have grabbed 11 guys from the stands and said, go down there, and they would have had the same amount of idea of what they were supposed to do. It would have been
Yeah.
as athletic, but they would have had the same amount of idea.
Right.
So it was encouraging to see that. When we saw the scripted drives, it was beautiful to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm interested as to why they went away from what worked early. I truly, and maybe this is me being hopeful, but it felt like Heupel was trying to see what worked and what didn't, and
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of doing a checklist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the screen game worked. We can run the ball inside. We can run the ball outside. And so you mentioned it. Milton has got to be better, but I trust that having game film now that Heupel will get that work through. And if not, there are two guys behind him that are capable of leading an offense. Obviously, he won the job for a reason, and maybe that's because the other guys are worse, or maybe he had a poor week one where he was trying to do too much. I'm willing to bet on the first one right now. But this next week is not a gimme. Pitt is not the best team in the Power Five conference, but they're not going to roll over and give it to you, and so they're going to have to improve on a lot of things. Want to see our receivers get open. Want to see our
Mm-hmm.
receivers catch the flipping ball.
Yeah.
Use your hands. Stop using your chest. Um, and better decision making.
Yeah. All right, talking about Pittsburgh and looking forward to week two of the Tennessee football season. Pittsburgh looked great in their opener versus UMass. How is that going to carry over against a more sturdy opponent like Tennessee is the big question. Now, here's what I'll say: is Pitt looked great across all four quarters of play, whereas Tennessee had a really big second quarter slump. Pitt played well enough to get three quarterback snaps. Their starter went 27 for 37 for 272 yards and two touchdowns. Their second string guy, he only completed all five of his passes. He's 5 for 5 for 58 yards. And then their third stringer, in some really cleanup garbage time, 2 for 3 for 45 yards. So all of these guys went in and just, completed passes, moved the ball down the field, and did well. Pitt is favored despite being on the road. And in my opinion, for Tennessee to win, Joe Milton has to be more consistent. He has to be a better decision maker. And then no other position can slack off from what we saw this past week. And I would agree with you that the wide receivers probably have to step up, get a little more separation, get open, and I don't know, work out a way to call for the ball or something. But, your defense has to play just as well, if not better. Your offensive line has to play just as well, if not better. I mean, all of those things, no one else can slack. And I think Milton has got to step up.
Yeah, you mentioned their second quarter slump. I'm trying to find the exact numbers, and I'm struggling to do so. But Tennessee ran, I think, 6 offensive plays in the second quarter.
Oh, it was abysmal.
So, I mean, part of that was bad offense, but a lot of that was Bowling Green just ate the clock in the second quarter.
Yeah, true.
And Tennessee wasn't able to get off the field. When Tennessee was able to get off the field, they were pretty dominant. I mean, they only
Mhm.
gave up 6 points.
Right.
So the defense was very encouraging. They're going to need that side of the ball to be as good this week, I think. I think this offense, once it starts clicking, will, they'll transition to that more typical Heupel style of we're going to outscore you and hope our defense holds up well enough. So we'll see if they're able to make some adjustments. It's fun. It's good to get film that's not against your own guys, right?
Mhm.
And I've seen enough with Milton's numbers in the past and his decision making to think that maybe this was just a case he was trying to do too much. Um, but I hope that Heupel has a short leash this week, right? I mean, if he's struggling and it's not getting the job done, don't let us get down 21-0. Make that call early. Even if it's just for a drive, right? I mean, we've seen that in the past where Garantano, for whatever reason, couldn't get it going from the start, but if he came off the bench, he was a different player. So, maybe getting Milton out for a drive or two and letting him watch the offense and settle down is what he needs. And I would like to see that. You know, Obviously, I think if he makes 2 or 3 more better decisions and guys catch the balls that hit him in the hands, we're having a different discussion this week about what Milton looked like last week. So I don't think there's any cause for panic. And I'm excited to watch them against a real team this week. It'll be good to get a test in a game that won't really matter. I mean, this Tennessee team does not truly have national championship aspirations. So you get a good litmus test against a pretty good Pitt team before you get into conference play. Kind of lets you get battle tested before that um, September 25th trip to Gainesville.
For sure. All right, you got a prediction on the score or release winner?
I think that Tennessee will keep it close. I think they'll have a chance to win it. It's going to take better execution this week. I did not see enough to trust our offense in a close matchup. I will take Pitt in like a 28-24, 28-27, something like that. Very
Yeah.
close, but I'm going to go against the Vols this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there actually with you. Got it right here in my notes. I say Pitt 28-24. I say that saying that, I won't be surprised if Tennessee wins, and my perspective opinion might change between now and then.
Yeah,
But
Tennessee's the better team, or the
yeah,
better team on paper. They have more
right.
talent.
Right.
It's a case of how long has Pitt's coach been there, and what is his new title, right?
Oh, Chancellor, I think.
No, somebody ponied up big money to
Oh, yeah, it's the name the
yeah, so he is now. So it's Pat Narduzzi, and this Chris Bickle paid like $20 million, and the head coach of Pitt is now called the Chris Bickle. It looks like class. So it's got the little apostrophe for like class of '97 head football coach. So there you go.
Love
He's
it.
been there for 7 years, so he's got
He's
his
got
system in
chemistry.
place.
His system's there. His guys know who they're playing for. They were all recruited by him. So, yeah, there's a little bit more chemistry there for sure. We'll see how it goes. I won't be surprised either way, but right now, if I had to pick, yeah, I'm taking Pitt in a close game, and we'll see from there. All right, really quick, we're just going to go through this one at a time.
Yeah.
No discussion on it. We're going to pick 5 games coming up. I'm going to start, if you're looking at my list, I don't know if you are or not, but
Yeah, I got it.
I'm going to go from 5 to 1.
Okay.
Just because I think we're getting into maybe some more interesting games. So, 5th game to pick, Utah versus BYU.
I guess BYU. Did Utah win? I guess they won.
Yeah, both teams coming in 1-0, but I'll go BYU in this. I think Utah's favored, but I'll go BYU.
Okay.
Michigan versus Washington. Yeah. Which team can fail their way to success this week?
No comment. I guess Michigan looked a little better. I mean, maybe Washington bounces back. Who needs the game more? I guess Harbaugh. I guess.
I don't know. Harbaugh's not. Yeah, I don't know. He's never. In
Where's
hot
that?
water
Where's
or
that game
something.
at? Do you know?
I think it's at Washington, but I wouldn't swear by it.
So was last week. So I'll take Michigan.
Yeah, I think that Washington could come back in a big bounce back fashion, but I just don't see it. I'm going to say
It's at
Michigan as
Michigan.
well.
It's at
Okay.
Michigan.
Yeah, so that helps. I say Michigan then for sure. All right, your Texas Longhorns versus Arkansas.
Was very impressed with what I saw from Sarkisian this week. I like his chances against Arkansas. It's his first. I mean, they had an actual game last week against Louisiana. Sark has played Arkansas as the OC in the past, so I think he is familiar enough with that defense to scheme some good things.
Yeah, I think Texas goes out and gets another great win this week. I picked Texas as well. Iowa versus Iowa State, and we've seen Iowa State struggle against another team with Iowa in its name. You mentioned already that Matt Campbell, Iowa State's coach, has struggled in the month of September. Now he's playing a in-state rival with potentially trying to get poached by that conference. Maybe, maybe not. What do you think happens here?
This is game day this week, so
Game day. Mm-hmm.
be enjoyable. It looks like it's a 3:30 kick, so not crazy night in Iowa or in Ames. This is at Iowa State. They looked pretty bad last week.
Mm-hmm.
They have the talent there to win this game, but Iowa looked pretty good, and I'm going to bet against, or I'm going to go with the numbers that say Matt Campbell struggles in September.
Yeah. Have to say the same thing. Really, preseason, if I had to pick this game, I'd have picked Iowa State.
Yeah,
But a week into it, after seeing what happened here, I got to go Iowa. And then perhaps the biggest matchup as far as ranked versus ranked or, contender versus contender, whatever. Oregon, yeah, Oregon versus Ohio State.
Where's this game at again? I think that matters a lot here. I mean, we mentioned it's at Iowa State. At Ohio State, sorry.
Yeah.
So we mentioned our picks to start the year for the conferences and how all of them we were rolling with the incumbent until we saw something else. Both of these teams struggled week one. Oregon pulled out a nail biter. Ohio State maybe loses if Minnesota doesn't lose their best player. It's a noon kickoff, which I think hurts the West Coast Oregon Ducks. So I guess Ohio State at home.
I like it. I just think Ohio State skill players are too much. I think we get into an offensive shootout, but I think that maybe favors Ohio State more than Oregon at the moment. So I also pick Ohio State.
Oregon's key defensive end was injured last week. A foot injury. He was in a walking boot. They said they expect him to play this week, but
he's not at 100% if he is.
Yeah, and it's a defensive end. You need that quick first step. So give me Ohio State.
All right. There's our top 5 picks for the week. There are more, and you can check them out. You can always ask us in our Discord for our opinions, and we'll get it completely wrong for you there. 2 more segments to go before we end up this podcast. Our first one is outside the stadium, and then we're ending with Mount Rushmore. Our Mount Rushmore tonight is our birthday desserts, our favorite birthday desserts. I had a birthday yesterday. Steven's is tomorrow. We've eaten a lot of dessert the last 2 days as we have celebrated these days, and so we're going to tell you what our Mount Rushmore is. Before we do that, though, we're just going to touch on outside the stadium a little bit, talking a little bit more about COVID, talking a little bit more about vaccines and how that plays in the NFL. So we've talked about this before a couple of weeks ago. I think maybe week 1 or week 2 of this season's episodes. We talked about how the NFL put a policy in place where if a team has to cancel or miss a game due to unvaccinated players having positive COVID tests, then the team that was required to miss has to basically pay a bunch of revenue to the team that they were going to play. It's kind of a crazy thing because it didn't say if your team misses due to COVID. No, it said if you miss due to unvaccinated players getting COVID, which is kind of setting a precedent for the NFL saying you need to be vaccinated. So fast forward to September 1st, and Jaguars head coach Urban Meyer mentioned that a player's vaccine status factored into his roster decision. Now this could have. Well, I think at first he said it did. And this announcement kind of immediately caused some backlash from the NFL Players Association, who, they officially launched an investigation into this claim. And that's when Myers came back and backtracked and mentioned that his roster contained both vaccinated and unvaccinated players, and that it was just one factor of criteria, which I get. That's
our star quarterback's not vaccinated.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't cut him. And so that's kind of what happened there.
Here's my thing on this. You may have more. Sorry if I'm jumping in here.
I do have more. Mullet. before you jump into that, though, got to give a shout out here. Mullet Proof Bunk in the chat, just gifting 5 Tier 1 subs to the community. Thank you, sir. 15 total subs in this channel. Thank you for the September gifts, and thank you for the birthday gifts. Steven's birthday is tomorrow. Mine was yesterday, so we count that as a great gift. Thank you, sir.
That's right. So, to me, you can be upset with this if you want. Excuse me. I don't like Urban Meyer as much as the next guy, but you put this policy in place of if guys miss games due to an unvaccinated breakout, I'm not keeping the 53rd guy on my team that's unvaccinated, and he has the chance to cause my team's COVID breakout. It causes me to lose a game, to lose all this money. Absolutely not. So yeah, you're not going to cut the guy that's a starter or a backup. But when you're getting down to the nitty-gritty 53rd man on the roster, I'm absolutely going to side with the guy that can. I mean, at that point, you're not going with who has the best chance to help you. It's who has the least chance to hurt you.
Okay.
And the least chance to hurt you is the unvaccinated player. So I understand the whole, and I agree that vaccine status should not truly factor into a roster decision. But it does whenever you've put that precedent out there of it matters in if the vaccine status matters in you being allowed to play and not, then it absolutely should and will matter in roster cut decisions.
Well, I'll go on to say that Meyer was not the first person to kind of mention this. Bills GM Brandon Beane made similar statements during the preseason, which he also had to back off of after some heat from the NFLPA. Now, this was brought up to the limelight again this past week when Bill Belichick released Cam Newton from the team. Cam Newton had been very vocal about not getting the vaccine. He's also been on the protocol, the COVID protocol, at least twice. But Bill Belichick did clarify that the vaccination status played no role in his roster moves, Cam Newton or otherwise. Yeah, and he did say that everyone being vaccinated would help the team, but pointed out that it would not solve the problem that plenty of vaccinated coaches and players are testing positive. I looked at this from an ESPN article earlier, and it said something along the lines of they had 68 positive cases from their test the last couple of weeks, and you were 7 times more likely to test positive if you were unvaccinated, which I yelled to my wife, who was down in her hammock at the time, to do the math for me. And she assured me it was something like basically out of every 8 people who tested positive, 1 was vaccinated and 7 were not. So it is definitely a higher number, but I think what we're going to see is that plenty of vaccinated players are also going to test positive. So you've already answered this a little bit for me, but here are my questions for you before we move into our last segment. Number 1, should vaccination status play a factor at all? Kind of you've alluded to this, so I'll just give the thing, and you kind of answered it already, though. If I have 1 roster spot left for a tight end, and I have to cut 1 of 2 of the guys, and they have equal skill, equal promise, equal talent, should that vaccination status factor? And B, you've already talked on this too, does that change at all based on what the NFL has said about this unvaccinated player financial obligation to the sick team?
Number 1, no, it shouldn't matter. Frankly, to me, it shouldn't matter, right?
Right.
Everybody has their own feelings on it. To me, the vaccine is a personal choice. With that personal choice comes consequences. I don't say consequences with a negative connotation, just, if you don't wear,
Ramifications.
Yeah, exactly. 2, it absolutely does matter now because of what the NFLPA has done. So it shouldn't matter, but if you're going to penalize me for a breakout caused by unvaccinated, right? Not just a breakout. If it's just a breakout, then it doesn't matter. But if you specifically say, hey, we will fine you or we will cause you to forfeit and you will lose a game and you will lose all that revenue, if it's an unvaccinated breakout, then that changes the whole algorithm, right? Now it factors in. So if that 53rd guy, that tight end you sign, is vaccinated and he gets COVID, it doesn't matter as much as if he's unvaccinated.
Right.
And so they have firmly planted their flag, and they have to deal with what comes from that.
Well, it does seem a little bit crazy to me that the NFLPA is going to launch investigations against these teams who are being honest and saying, yes, someone's vaccination status did impact my decision. It didn't.
It mattered
It
for
didn't
all 32
solely.
teams.
Of course, it did. It might not be the sole reason. It might not be the most important reason. You're certainly not going to go and cut
Yeah, if
your
Tom
star
Brady is
quarterback. Right.
unvaccinated, he's
You're
not
not
getting
cutting him.
cut.
Right, exactly. But to say that it doesn't factor and that it shouldn't factor based on the rules that the NFL has put out is just absolutely asinine. And so the NFLPA should not be investigating these teams or some unfair treatment of their players caused by an organization other than the organization of the NFL itself and its commissioner and the ones who are not having a spine enough to say we're requiring vaccines. They're not saying that. They're saying you have a choice. We're just going to completely screw you over depending on what that choice is. And that seems a little bit unfair to the player, to the organization, to everyone else. I think the NFL, I've said this before, they just need to grow a spine and require them if you're going to require them.
Well, the NFL is the most wishy-washy of all of the professional organizations, right? I mean, the NBA has a clear policy, and they're going to enact it whether you like it or not. And the options are you deal with it and you play, or you don't, and you go play overseas, or you don't play at all.
Yeah.
And so the NFL continues to be wishy-washy. They continue to try to play both sides, and all they've done is put teams in a difficult position and put players in a difficult position. So if the NFLPA wants to be ticked off at somebody, they need to run that right back up the chain to the NFL and stop putting this investigation on teams and general managers and coaches who are just trying to look out for the outcome of the team, right? They're worried about the team's bottom line and they're worried about the team's success. And I have to put my team together the best way that it makes sense, right? It's just like any other roster decision. I'm not going to play the third string quarterback over the first string quarterback because of his religion, race, or anything else. I've got to do what's best for my team. And if you place rules, if you have rules in place that affect potential outcomes, then I'm going to make my decisions based on those rules. And that's back on you, not on me.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Hey, it's time to hit this segment that we like to call Mount Rushmore. You watching the stream, Stevie?
I have it pulled up.
Don't miss it. That's right, friends. It is time for our Mount Rushmore segment where we break down our top 4 of something. If you're watching the stream, you are getting the beautiful sight of a really cheesy graphic that I made just for this segment. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a thing.
It's a thing.
All right, our Mount Rushmore segment, we give you our top 4, maybe plus an honorable mention or 2 of some crazy topic. Tonight we're doing birthday desserts because we're celebrating some birthdays. I turned 35 yesterday. Steven turns 6 tomorrow. And so we're celebrating. We're celebrating in fashion. We've eaten a lot of dessert the last couple of days because you celebrated with me yesterday. I celebrated with you tonight. And we just got a lot of good meals out of this. So let's break it down. Lead us off, my friend.
So I will start with number 4. I'm going to preface this. Face is not here, so I won't throw in the Wendy's comment here. But number 4. So I don't like cake. Okay. I'm not a cake guy. It's just not my thing.
Okay.
So number 4, I do have Nothing Bundt Cake, which is it's a chain across America. Really, I saw one when I was in California. I've seen them in Florida. But for our international guests here, it is an American chain that produces bundt cake, and specifically the red velvet. It is very good. It's
got chocolate chips in it.
It's about the only cake that I will eat. Most of their cakes are good, and I can eat them, but the red velvet is good. So that made number 4, mostly because I had to pick a 4th. So at number 3, I have apple pie. I love apple pie. It is one of my favorite desserts. We're getting into more of the pie season here in the fall.
We are.
And so I'm excited for that. So give me an apple pie. Pie over cobbler as well, if we have that debate, personally. Number 2, we had some tonight. It was delicious. Pineapple upside down cake.
So I just got to pause you real quick because you just said I don't like cake. I only put this one cake on my list. And now we got cake at number 2.
Pineapple upside down cake is different.
Okay.
It is not.
Seems like semantics to me, but
If
okay.
if we ranked fruit, pineapple would be at the top, and so I love a pineapple upside down cake. It doesn't have the same consistency as a cake, in my opinion. Um, so love me some pineapple upside down cake, with or without cherries. I can eat it either way. I'll let you decide which one
With.
you prefer.
I mean, I
Okay.
had that. I had the one that your me and mom made tonight without, and it
Hmm.
was fantastic. I'm not saying I can
It's very
improve it,
good.
but cherries is
Yeah.
always an addition
Yeah,
worth
cherries
having.
is good. It's a different change of pineapple fritters sounds amazing. Um, Number one is cheesecake. You make a mean cheesecake. It is very good. I must admit, I prefer my cheesecake with crust. So I guess that's
Mm,
not New York style.
okay.
Um, but I like any kind of cheesecake. Give me some caramel drizzle. Give me some strawberries, some fresh cut strawberries to put on top. Um, Anything really. I once had a bananas Foster cheesecake, and oh
Okay.
my goodness, was that amazing!
All
Honorable
right.
mentions to brownies.
Okay.
Do you count chocolate chip cookies as a true dessert or more of a snacky?
No, it's a dessert. That's fine.
Okay, chocolate chip cookies, specifically Nestle Toll House, they're the best. And then ice cream. It's not my favorite, but I mean, you can always kind of go for some ice cream, right? Like it's a thing. My wife loves ice cream, so
Oh,
I go get ice
I
cream.
think, I don't mean to be gender stereotypical here, but I think, I like ice cream too, don't get me wrong, but I think the love of ice cream is somehow biologically ingrained into women because my wife could, no matter
Yeah.
what's going on, she could eat ice cream and day or night, whatever, full, not full,
If I'm getting ice cream, it's either in the form of a milkshake
or root beer
or
float.
a float of sorts, specifically root beer. I At our wedding, that was our dessert. We did have a cake that we cut, but I did not want cake at the wedding. I pushed for a root beer or a float selection.
Float
So we had
station. Yeah.
Fanta and Coke and different things, but root
Yeah.
beer float is the best of those.
All right, I'm going to say this. You made a really good list of really good desserts. Some
Okay,
of them are applicable for birthdays. Some of them are, I just feel like you're naming good desserts. And I don't hate you for naming good desserts, but I'm just saying
not a dessert guy. That's the
it's
bottom line here.
it's kind of weird to me of like someone walking out with an apple pie with some candles sticking out of it singing happy birthday to you.
I
I'm
have a
not saying it can't
picture.
happen.
I have a
I'm just saying it's
picture
weird.
of my brother's birthday cake one year where it is a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts with candles on top. So
That's fair. Your brother's weird though. All right, here we go. Here's the correct list for Mount Rushmore of birthday desserts. Birthday desserts being the key word. These are not the best desserts. These aren't my always go-to ones. If I'm just in the mood for dessert, right? But here are the birthday ones. Number 4, chocolate cake with white icing.
mm,
This is a fine birthday cake. It's not my favorite, but all things considered, I like the fact that it's chocolate within the white icing. We're not doubling up on something, okay? I like that. That's important.
okay.
Number 3, it's a little bit less traditional, but I will give you brownies because you can make a pan of brownies and you can stick candles in them, and that can be a great thing. Now, with the brownies, don't you dare put nuts on them. And
Uh
for this case, don't put any kind of icing or anything goofy like that on them. I'm just talking about some good old brownies, okay? Bring them out.
Reese's brownies.
Acceptable. Acceptable. Sure.
Mhm.
Number 2, I'll agree with you on cheesecake because it does have the word cake in its name. It can be a nice thing to put some candles in, to carry it out, saying happy birthday. There's plenty to share. It's good to go. And the number 1 is white cake with chocolate icing with a quick honorable mention of like a yellow cake with chocolate icing. I'm not partial either way, but I like the not chocolate cake with chocolate icing. Right? It's got to be white cake. It can be yellow. It can even be like a funfetti. I don't care. But as long as it's not a chocolate cake, but it has chocolate icing, that is my number 1 go-to. That's what I want. That's what my wife makes me every year for my birthday. Makes for a great day. And Whitey, we don't have Mars bar slice. I don't know what that is, but I would eat it because it sounds good.
I'm out.
I will
I don't
say
know.
this. Whereas I do enjoy ice cream, I love Ben and Jerry's. I love ice cream in general. I'm not a big ice cream on my birthday fan. I don't want some vanilla ice cream with my cake or anything. No, just give me the cake. We're good. Okay, just give me
No,
the
no,
cake.
not the old school white cake.
Neapolitan.
white cake, white ice cream with Neapolitan there.
Yeah, don't need it.
Or white cake,
Just,
white icing.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm not going to go there.
If my wife were picking, by the way, the correct answer for her would be Food City cake, white icing from Food City,
That's racist.
with any kind of ice cream. She's all about that. If I'm in trouble or she's in a bad mood, not right now because she's eating healthy, but typically that's how I would save the day. White cake from Food City, white icing, ice cream of any kind. Okay. All right. Steven, do you have anything else for us today?
I'll bump apple pie just for you. I'll do nothing bun at 3, brownies at 4.
Okay.
Apple pie is a great dessert, but I understand.
Apple pie is a great dessert. I will say I put warm apple pie as an honorable mention as far as dessert. But
we'll do dessert later.
We will. As we get into November, we'll do what we've done before on this podcast because we have a lot of new audience. And throughout the month of November, we're going to do a Thanksgiving side, a Thanksgiving main course, a Thanksgiving dessert, and I don't know. We'll figure something out. Thanksgiving, something else, pant size, whatever.
Like cranberry sauce should not belong.
Well, as a quick reminder, we're looking for a new co-host of the Sports Corner podcast. Steven doesn't know what he's talking about. I won't do the show with him anymore.
Are you a can or a...
I don't care. I mean, I prefer the non-can, but I like it all. Okay. Steven, anything else from week 1 of the college football season?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
I want the craziness to continue, though. I'm a big fan of
I do love a little bit of insanity. All right, really quick, as we go out tonight, let me remind you that the Sports Corner podcast is recorded live on twitch.tv/PastorNick86 every Monday night, starting at 9 o'clock Eastern. We would love for you to come be a part of the live chat. We have a great time. You can dialogue and tell us what's going on, what we get right, what we get wrong, what we've missed, etc., etc. So please come hang out with us in chat every Monday night at twitch.tv/PastorNick86. You can also catch this broadcast on YouTube. It is a video on demand. You can see the chat as it scrolls across the screen. You can see our beautiful faces and more. Or at the very least, you can find us on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, Apple, everywhere. We're on there. Please rate us 5 stars. Leave us a good review.
We would love to read a review live.
We would love to read a review. I gotta admit, I haven't checked in like 2 weeks to see if anyone's written one. So
no one has.
So we would love for you to do that, but we're also found there. And more than anything, you can also find us in our Discord server where you'll always be notified of when we're going live, what we're talking about, and you can dialogue back and forth with us. We have talked about the first week of the college football season. We've broken it down. We've listed winners, losers, helmet stickers. We've talked about COVID in the NFL and our Mount Rushmore and so much more. This has been episode 6 of season 3 of the Sports Corner podcast. I've been joined by birthday boy tomorrow, Steven. I'm birthday boy yesterday, Nick. And we'll catch you next time.
And now that your mom knows that you stream, maybe she'll rate the podcast.
Or just love me.